welcome to my second tarot session with astrology and maybe numerology. This is Tuesday, July 19, 2022. I did my first of these YouTubes a couple of days ago. It was very long, 30 plus minutes, but very worthwhile if you can listen to that one. And that was a 3-card Aquarian Tarot reading with some introduction about how I brought a deck of cards to Findhorn during their Essence program in October of 1976 and what happened, and a little history about Tarot. I also presented the actual chart for when I bought the deck at Samuel Weiser Bookstore in New York City, and so on. So please take a look at that. What happened today was pretty extraordinary. Chiron, the small centaur comet-like body discovered November 1 of 1977, made a station, apparently from the Earth's standpoint, to begin a retrograde motion for several months. And also, and some of you may have my cosmic calendar, the Astrology Cosmic Calendar, calendar with a K, the app, free 1 day at a time and pennies a day by subscription on your iPhone or Android phone. So if you do, and if you've been looking at it, then you would have read about Chiron and its archetypes and so on. Well, I woke up exactly when Chiron was officially from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory stationary, and I proceeded to have all of these downflows of ideas and inspirations pretty much about my 50 plus years of doing astrology, tarot, numerology, metaphysics, and so on. I'm going to present some book covers rather fast in a little while. Some of the books I have on Chiron and metaphysics, just to sort of open the door to any of you. If you've never seen these books, they may still be available on Amazon and so on. I've collected some of these for decades. What you see in front of you are 3 different chariot cards, the 7th major card, Arcana card. The first one, just so you can see, and what I wanted to get to here so I don't forget about it, Rex Bear has interviewed me now several times. Bless his soul. He runs the Leak Project, which is also on YouTube, interviews many different people. And today, earlier, we just had a sharing where he talked about a whole bunch of things, including the power of Chiron. And my feeling is that this 7th major Arcana card represents a strong part of the higher energies of what Chiron represents as a shaman, as a mentor, in a sense, the soul that we all have in the vehicle of our personality. And that's what comes across in the chariot and the charioteer. Fundamentally, the chariot itself represents the structure, or almost our home base in the world. It's interesting that most tarot researchers indicate the zodiacal sign of Cancer in representing this 7th card, and I agree with that, and Cancer is the key sign of home and family. Not to go too long into this, but these are the chariot card that I'm touching here, all the way to the right, where the moon's on right and left shoulder, the sword, and the star sort of at the point of his Ajna center, third eye area. This is from the Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini. I introduced that the last time. I also showed the new Palladini Tarot as well when I did the previous sharing. The card to the left is the same chariot card, but from the new Palladini deck. You'll see how that evolved, a very powerful symbol. So I'm not going to get into all the archetypes here, but then Rex Bear has created a fantastic tarot deck. And so in our sharing today, we discussed all this, and I sent a picture of these different images. You'll notice the flying saucers in this card, the sphinxes, rather than necessarily horses and a whole bunch of other symbols, but you'll see the 2 moons and so on. So, and by the way, then I brought in this, which is the cover of Baseball Tarot that I introduced the last time, that I created with Laura Phillips, and I put number 7. When I grew up in New York City, as many of you know, if you've ever listened to my 47 years as a psychic astrologer back on GreatBearEnterprises.com, in my podcast section, we now have 99 podcasts. One of them was called my 47 years as psychic astrologer. And being a kind of baseball fanatic and sports fanatic when I grew up, it turned out that back in the 50s and 60s when I was growing up, Mickey Mantle was the famous number 7. So we kind of immortalized him on the cover here. But what's interesting is in all different tarot decks, or most of them, one of the words that comes out is control, the ability to control the chariot, to control the horses or the sphinxes. So in many ways, the essence of the chariot has so much to do with who we are as a soul. I believe, as I've shared many times, and I've been on Coast to Coast, I've been with Rex on Leak Project, I've been on TV, radio, through my podcast back at www.greatbearenterprise.com, sharing my views that we live many times. I believe very strongly in reincarnation. I've studied that in many different venues, through the Edgar Cayce teachings, through Rudolf Steiner, through Lucis Trust, the Alice Bailey teachings, Alice Bailey being inspired for 30 years by her teacher, the Tibetan Master DK. And I was fortunate enough to work at Lucis Publishing Company. I actually was the editor of their bi-monthly magazine called The Beacon. That was back in the early 70s, and I worked there for several years before I was fortunate enough to then go to the Findhorn Foundation, or Findhorn Community, if you've heard of that, in northern Scotland. Okay, so today, power of Chiron, not moving. It's in the sign of Aries. I woke up exactly when that was happening, wrote down so many different ideas, particularly concerning the launch of what will be GPS Astrology magazine online. We made that announcement 3 days ago on Saturday, July 16th. And if you go to our website at greatbearenterprise.com, if you go to the top, you'll now see a little title, GPS Astrology. And if you click on that, you'll be able to read about our launch plans for August 11th at the full moon of Leo and Aquarius. We'll fundamentally start as a quarterly online magazine. We're open to submissions for articles. They don't have to be strictly astrology. What we're trying to promote is goodwill is love in action, which is part of the theme I learned very strongly at Lucis Trust, the Arcane School, and Lucis Publishing back in New York City. By the way, if you ever go online to lucistrust.org, Lucis, LUCISTRUST.org, you can get a lot of free complementary literature, see all the different books. There's also part of their organization is called Triangles, as well as World Goodwill. And so what is the goal of GPS Astrology? It's partly to connect all of our lives through the idea of the grand trine or triangular formations, like the trinity of so many different world religions and philosophies, with the supernal triangle of the Great Bear, the 7 stars of the Big Dipper and the part of the Great Bear constellation, as well as the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, and Sirius, the star that is the brightest star in the sky. It's actually a double star system. So when you see the cover that we've revealed and the plan for all of that for GPS Astrology. So GPS is a play on the idea of global positioning satellites, but they're the first 3 letters of Great Bear, G, Pleiades, P, and S for Sirius. Hence, I received this vision back almost a year ago. And my daughter, Lerner, has designed this wonderful cover, and now we're finally getting everything ready to go out August 11th. By the way, so again, what we did earlier today, if you go on YouTube and look for the Leak Project, L-E-A-K Project, you'll see an interview that Rex did with me, Rex Bear, the host, about some of these cards and what we experienced. And also I had sent him a picture of the baseball tarot with the number 7 there. So this is also the theme of 7, the mystical number, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes of the musical scale, the 7 sacred, the 7 days of the week, days of creation, what were called in ancient Judaism, the Elohim, 7 spirits before the throne. In the Alice Bailey teachings, there's this mention in so many of the different books, the Rays and the Initiations, Esoteric Healing, Esoteric Astrology, a treatise on white magic, and so on, about 7 rays from 1 to 7, each with different powers and energies, and that each human being has a soul ray and a personality ray, and they change from time to time, from lifetime to lifetime. So if any of you look at the cover of the design for GPS Astrology magazine, you'll see a singular figure, and that figure is kind of walking on cobblestones, and there's a faint rainbow beneath this figure. And then you'll see the much larger triangle, which is connecting up to the Great Bear, the Pleiades and Sirius, hence GPS astrology. And you'll see the word astrology across the middle in rainbow colors, with the exact, the O in the middle of astrology being a sun, a yellow sun. You'll see also the symbolism of the figure who is looking toward outward. In other words, we see the back of this figure, and the figure is wearing a yellow jacket, shall we say, which is in sync with the yellow image of the sun in our solar system. So all of this is sort of done deliberately. Also, the stories that you might see listed on the bottom are just placeholders. We haven't made absolute decisions yet of what the storylines are going to be. We have a number of astrologers and non-astrologers who are going to be sharing. It's going to be a tour de force. It's an experiment because it will be an online magazine. And many of you know that I created Welcome to Planet Earth in print 41 years ago. And that's when my daughter, Katja Lerner, who's going to be managing editor of this, she was born at that time. And that had a whole 20-year history from a stapled together newsletter back in 1981, then becoming a newspaper in 1982, and then eventually a magazine in 1987, and then going for another 13 years until we ended that print run. We had thousands of people from all over the world and a wonderful group of mostly mundane astrologers sharing about the Earth, about presidents, about administrations, about the beginning of seasons, eclipses, new moons and full moons, and all kinds of fantastic stories. And plus, Welcome to Planet Earth wasn't just astrology. We shared about metaphysics. We shared about astronomy. We shared about climate changes, psychology, all the interweaving of different kind of metaphysical subjects. It was really fascinating, and a whole great group of astrologers. Part of the experiment now is to sort of look at things through the lens of social science. I was actually a sociology, multidisciplinary social science major at Michigan State when I went to school in 1968, 1971. I've shared before, my father was a doctor. It looked like I was supposed to go into medicine. And I think I shared in the previous recording that what happened was I got to Michigan State, didn't feel comfortable with being pre-med, so I changed to pre-law after 6 weeks. I wasn't comfortable with law, got into social science and sociology, and that became my major. And I've wondered for some almost 50 years, what was I going to do with a Bachelor of Art in social science? And now it feels like in 2022, with all the radical changes going on, the way the world is shifting, that this is a prime time to do, shall we say, an astrology journal that's also metaphysical, but the people who are writing are not necessarily all astrologers. So do not be intimidated. If you'd like to submit something, please feel free to do so. Again, if you go to our website at greatbearenterprise.com, go to the top where you'll see GPS astrology. You click on that, you'll see the reveal of the cover and how to contact my daughter, and then we'll see how this all unfolds. Now, I'm just going to throw, before actually doing a couple of cards today, okay, I do want to do a couple of cards. What I'd like to do is just show some titles here, just to show you my background with Chiron. And Chiron is extremely powerful in my own chart. That's why this morning when I woke up exactly when Chiron made its official station, it was pretty shocking to me. And this is also the one day of the month when the moon and Chiron are together. By the way, many of you know there's going to be another one of these total solar eclipses running through the United States. The previous one was in August of 2017. Kind of came through, starting in Oregon, where I live, went through the middle of the United States, and then came through Charleston, South Carolina, as it was ending, which is amazing because that's where the Civil War started back in 1861. The next one is going to happen April 8th of 2024, and that total solar eclipse is going to come up through Mexico and go more through the south and the southeast and then go through Canada. What's remarkable, and I will be sharing more about that, is that new moon in the sign of Aries is exactly conjunct Chiron. That's coming up in the next year and a half. Very powerful. And the United States is also about to have a Chiron return for the first time in 50 years. Back when the country began on July 4th, 1776, at the Declaration of Independence, the main chart for the United States, Chiron was located at 20 plus of Aries. In fact, right now in the sky, the moon is at 20 plus of Aries on the United States Chiron, and that can only happen for about an hour or two every 27 days. So this is a big Chiron day. Okay, so here's a Chiron Ephemeris for 100 years. I use this all the time. Here's a Chiron Ephemeris that's from 2000, 2050. These are fantastic books, so you can watch where Chiron is every single day if you want to do it this way. Zane Stein, one of the foremost researchers, wrote his first book on Chiron. Chiron was discovered November 1, 1977. A lot of our writers wrote books on Chiron. Here's another one, Richard Knoll, Chiron, the new planet in your horoscope, the key to your quest. The symbol is really a key, okay? Keys that open doors to higher consciousness, the idea of shamans and mentors. And by the way, I researched Rod Serling, who created the Twilight Zone. Twilight zones of strange consciousness and being outside of chronological time, being in what was defined by Zane Stein early on when he did his research, that there's what we call chirological time. It's kind of a higher dimensional energy. And when Chiron is incredibly powerful, very often we feel outside time. When President Kennedy was murdered, Chiron was exactly stationary. The whole world, in a sense, shifted for several days. Many of you were not alive then, but for 4 solid days on the main networks, there were no ads, and the whole country was sort of, not just the whole country, the whole world was just in a stunned situation of what had occurred. That's affected me my whole life. I've done major studies on the chart for President Kennedy's life and the assassination, but he was murdered when Chiron was stationary. I've done so much research and so many other great astrologers in Welcome to Planet Earth, and we're going to keep this going. Chiron Rainbow Bridge between the inner and outer planets, Barbara Hand Clow. Baron Company that Barbara Hand Clow created, she was instrumental in our starting Isha Lerner and myself, Mark Lerner, when we created Inner Child Cards. Baron Company published Inner Child Cards, and as I shared the last time, they've been translated into at least a dozen or more languages thanks to Isha's incredible work around the planet. So Barbara Hand Clow was instrumental in accepting Inner Child Cards about fairy tales and the collective consciousness. Here's another book I've had for a long time, The Continuing Discovery of Chiron, Hermione Lantero. These are not all of them. There's many other books. Melanie Reinhardt, Chiron and the Healing Journey, an Astrological and Psychological Perspective. I did a big series of stories, and I don't have the cover right now, but here are some examples of from different issues. Discover Your Personal Chirological Time Cycles. That's by me. I gave the chart for the Chiron discovery here, if you can see that, November 1, 1977. Part 2, Chirological Cycles. Again, notice the key symbology, and Chirological Cycles, Part 3. I put a chart of Jeff Bridges, the great actor. He's born exactly on the day of a Sun-Chiron conjunction. It's fascinating to look at people, celebrities, all of our charts. We've got Chiron somewhere in whatever house, sign, configured with all different other celestial bodies. Okay, and I'm not even going to open the following, but I just want to show you. In my closet, I've had this for years. Here's my Chiron file. I'm not even going to open it, but I have dozens of little stories and so on. I've had this for several decades now. Okay, so without further ado, what I'm actually going to do here is put these cards aside, and I'm going to do a little reading with the original Aquarian Tarot. By the way, after the other reading, I pulled the Two of Cups, but I never actually did a recording about that, but I found it was interesting. If you listen to the other, look at and listen to the other recording, you'll see that there was the Eight of Swords, started that 3-card reading. This is from the original Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini. Okay, that's this deck. And the Eight of Swords appeared, then the Ace of Swords, and I explained more about that, and the Eight of Pentacles. So then the next day I shuffled the deck, this came out, and I thought it was pretty amazing because it then brought the female and the male figure from the previous reading. Now there are 2 cups, 2 goblets, they're toasting one another, they're equal. The goblets are representing hearts being shared. It's a very beautiful card. Okay, so I wanted to do at least a session. I'm going to make this kind of short. And I think what I'm going to do, because I don't want this to be too long, is I'm just going to choose one card. Sometimes I suggest, rather than doing a lot of cards, I find it fascinating to do one. Because if you do one card and you're tuned in, today's question is Chiron and healing and shamans and mentors and twilight zones. I don't know if I finished that thought, but Rod Serling was born at a Chiron return for the United States in the sign Aries in 1924. He created the Twilight Zone series and died when Chiron came back. So he lived a Chiron cycle, and not just a Chiron cycle, but his Chiron was conjunct the United States Chiron, and when that returned for the U.S., he died. So it's kind of like the story of Mark Twain, who came in on Halley's Comet. He knew that he had come in on Halley's Comet. I think it was November 30th, 1835, if I remember correctly, Mark Twain being born. And then at some point somebody talked about, oh, that's when Halley's Comet came in, and he said, well, I expect to go out when it comes back. And when it came back 76 years later, because Halley's Comet is what we call a periodic comet, he died and left the scene. So Mark Twain was definitely connected to Halley's Comet and some of that astrology and so many other things. He was a sun sign Sagittarius, and Mark Twain's sun is conjunct the rising degree and rising sign for the United States, at least in the chart we use at Welcome Planet Earth and what I've used at Great Parent Prizes for so long. Okay, well, here's the card that's coming up. Okay, so you saw me shuffle the deck. It's one card. And I think it's pretty fascinating. If we go back to the Chiron cards, okay, I was talking about the charioteer, the idea of the soul in the personality. So now we have another figure of somebody who's any knight of the four main suits represents movement. Often knights represent the military, but in this case, rods or flowering rods show sensitivity. And I think that at least my experience today, and the figure, while it's a knight and is a male figure, is not exactly a warlike looking figure. You can see the sensitivity that David Palladini put into the face of this figure. There's no stormy clouds, okay? You have a flowering rod. I think it's interesting that the knight is holding the rod with his left hand, not necessarily the right hand. Left often represents intuition or psychic sensitivity. And whatever this rod is clearly growing. There are flowers or seeds that are coming out. The person is on a mission. So if we think of what shamans are, mentors are, male and female, notice also the helmet. There's either a sort of upper atmospheric kind of clouds, maybe inspiration that's coming through the head chakra there, so that he's sort of getting guidance. Even when you look at a card like this, you see the sensitivity, almost like a lightning-like energy with a chin strap. Then down here are kind of these unknown forms, and some of those are repeated in his jacket, which are then more of a nice-looking material. So at any rate, you just saw me. I just shuffled the cards. This is what I'm giving out on the day of Chiron being stationary. The moon exactly in the United States, Chiron. Today was the one day of the month when the moon and Chiron were conjunct. And tomorrow, I just thought I'd mention this, I will be on with Christy Walsh, who has a show on SoundCloud. And we're going to be on for maybe up to an hour. And she does a show on SoundCloud, Surfing the Psychic Waves. So we're going to be sharing about the moon and so many other things, and hopefully have another session as well in August. So that's Surfing the Psychic Waves. Tomorrow, if you know about SoundCloud, then you'll be able to tune into that particular broadcast and sharing about the moon. So I will leave you all. It's a little longer than what I wanted to be, but it's shorter than the other time. So I wish you all many blessings. Thank you very much. Please subscribe, tell your friends about this. Go visit greatvarenterprises.com. Make sure you get into the Astrology Cosmic Calendar with a K, for your iPhone or Android phone. Free one day at a time, but pennies a day. And if you subscribe, then you get to go into the future, 2 to 4 weeks into the future. I just finished writing all the calendar entries through August 17. Today is July 19. That's almost exactly 4 weeks into the future. And I've been doing this for 41 years. It used to be the centerpiece for Welcome to Planet Earth when that was in print for 20 years. And then my daughter, Katya, created this as an app a couple years ago. But this has been going strong. The daily astrology cosmic calendar about all the different cycles in the heavens. And if you think you know astrology and you focus an enormous amount of attention on your transits and progressions in your natal chart to understand that, that's terrific. But there's this whole other universe of what's happening in the sky. And each one of us is really a walking cosmic calendar, because at the first moment of our breath, we started our journeys. Each one of us has 12 houses, the sun, moon, 8 main planets, 4 asteroids, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta, the dragon's head and tail, the north and the south nodes of the moon. We've got Chiron, and with some astrologers, you can see Sedna and Aries and other centaurs and other asteroids. It makes for quite a lively natal chart and very powerful transits and different series of progressions. Nevertheless, the cosmic calendar opens you up to your resonance with what's happening in the sky. And you can't forget that each one of us, when we're born, that birth chart that we have, wherever you were born, longitude and latitude at a moment of time, month, day, and year, that was the picture of the cosmic calendar of the cycles in the heavens at that moment. So if you don't sort of tune in each day to what is happening in the sky itself and not just your own transits and progressions, you're going to miss an enormous amount. So that's what I've been doing for 41 years, the astrology cosmic calendar with K. So take good care. Next couple of days, I'll be back with another session. And I really appreciate everybody joining in here. Bye for now.